So currently we are on North Argyle and Southeast Fresno on scene. The police investigating a shooting that happened here. Apparently a gentleman walking along the canal, which is behind these homes here in North Argyle, opened fire, striking somebody who had a confrontation with a gentleman in his 20s, which was behind this home. Apparently, according to the police chief, Jerry Dyer, he lived behind and sometimes behind on the canal, and apparently there was a gentleman lived on the victim ended up opening fire. Does have a concealed weapons permit, and so the investigation's ongoing. Both were taken to the hospital, the suspect and the victim. We're going to update you guys, get some more information. Tune in to KC24 at 11 o'clock, and then we will update you there.
That they've had a past conflict in the past, and the 22-year-old at some point, according to the victim, grabbed a stick of some sort or a wooden object and struck the 73-year-old with that object. It was during that time that the 73-year-old male fell backwards and apparently has injured his leg, perhaps even broken the lower portion of his leg. It was also at that point the 73-year-old pulled out a firearm and fired 3 rounds at the 22-year-old, striking him in the hip area. The 73-year-old does in fact have a concealed weapons permit. It was issued this last year, and based on the information we have at this time, although we still have the investigation, it does appear that the 73-year-old was attempting to defend himself, and at that point pulled out the firearm in order to do so. And with that, I'll open up to any questions you might have.
In a case like this, self-defense, obviously he has permission to a concealed weapon. He's correct, or what would happen now?
The 73-year-old is certainly within his rights to carry that firearm. He has a concealed weapon. In terms of whether or not he's justified in the use of that firearm today, based on self-defense, there's still a lot of investigation to do, and then coordinating office to make that final conclusion. But based on the preliminary information we have, and the fact that this 73-year-old does appear that he was struck with some type of a stick or a wooden object, it does appear at this point that he was defending, had the legal right to do so, and had the legal right to be there. But we don't know much about the 22-year-old other than his name is Martin. He does live here periodically at 133 North Argyle, but oftentimes he sleeps out in the back.
So this occurred at the 22-year-old's home?
It actually occurred on the canal bank, near the canal, behind where this individual stays periodically.
At the 133 North
Argyle.
And then this other gentleman was walking through. Does he live in this area?
Mr. Kaiser lives just north of this residence. According to Mr. Kaiser and Damon Martin have had past conflicts, have had arguments. I don't know that it's ever escalated to any type of physical confrontation, but we do know that today it did. And based again on our information, he was struck with a stick, the victim was, pulled out a firearm, fired 3 times, and struck Damon Martin in the hip area.
Do you know how Martin is condition?
He is in the hospital now at CRMC. We do not know his point, nor do we know the condition of Mr. Kaiser, other than the fact that paramedics on scene felt that he may have broken his lower portion of the leg or ankle.
What about a future arrest, possibly?
Again, there's no fact that he struck Mr. Kaiser with that stick or with whatever object there was. And again, we, at this point in time, are operating under the fact that Mr. Kaiser was operating with self-defense. Could change.
And looking forward in this investigation that you guys are just looking at right now, in general.
We have not done a thorough job of interviewing or Martin. That's going to have to occur. Obviously, initially we need to get There'll be follow-up interviews of them. We'll be looking for any video cameras that might be in the area, any witnesses, and again looking at the history of these 2 individuals to see if in fact there was some type of conflict, looking at any other injuries that Mr. Kaiser may have from being struck with that object. all of that information will be available to us here in the next few days.
Suspect that lives behind this house. I mean, is he a resident? Do the residents here know who he is? I mean, what's the relationship there?
The 22-year-old stays here at it's my family member that he oftentimes stays with at 133 North Argyle. But for whatever he sleeps inside the house periodically, off outside as well on that canal bank.
And the fact the person who opened fire was not at home, does that change anything? Situation that he was just out for self-defense.
Mr. Kaiser was in a public place on a canal bank doing what he does frequently, and that is cleaning up the canal bank, when all of a sudden he had a confrontation with this individual in a public place. Based on the information we have, he was attacked with some type. He pulled out his firearm and defended himself at that point, fired in 3 rounds.
Any information on the confrontation? What sparked it? I mean, I know you said they had history, but any idea on this point? I know the investigation's ongoing.
What started the confrontation, okay. Other than we know in past conflict between the two, and based on what we have been, something to do with that individual frequently being out bank and maybe posing some type of a problem.